Hello and welcome to today's Scriptcase video. My name is Jamie and I am your host today. In today's video, we are talking all about protecting your applications with the available security features within Scriptcase. So what will we see in this presentation? Well, we will discuss GDPR a little, as well as privacy, risks, and measures that you can take. Now, GDPR is quite an important topic because it applies to laws. And data protection, well, we love that topic now, don't we? That is, of course, very important to us over here in Europe as well as over in Brazil. Privacy. Privacy is, again, another one of those great topics which we have discussed so much over the last years, and I'm sure we will continue with that discussion for much longer. Now, the risks that we have with our applications and those associated to those bad users that we have on the World Wide Web, well, for those, we have some solutions that you can implement. And the measures that you would apply, we will, of course, discuss those. So what is GDPR? Well, GDPR is the General Data Protection Law. And as I just mentioned a few moments ago, it is law. So GDPR is very important because it ensures that our personal data is to be handled in a safe manner and accordance to legal requirements. So there are specific laws for this on how we are to handle a user's information. And that is also built into Scriptcase. Now, if you didn't know, in Brazil, because I mentioned in Brazil, it's just as important as it is for us here in Europe and in other countries. So for Brazil legislation, they aim to protect their citizens' privacy as well as their personal data. And of course, that is also very important to themselves, to the people. And it should be, of course, because we like to keep something private. Okay, so the GDPR was actually approved in 2018. So it was a few years ago now. And you may have heard about it at the time because all the websites had to apply some new pop-ups asking you to agree. Can they collect your data? Can they do their tracking? Can they pass on your information to third parties? And all of that is included within the GDPR legislation. And of course, there are laws on how we are allowed to collect this data, store it, process it, share it, remove it, and all for the entire public sector. And that is, of course, very important. And it's important to note that that is built into the Scriptcase environment. So it's not something you would generally have to worry too much about. Now, there are some key points of GDPR, and that is the consent from the data subject, i.e. the person that is then using the service. So are you then allowed as the provider to collect data from them? There are various principles of purpose, meaning what is that content going to be used for? And if it's required, really, you need to be transparent with that information and share why and who you will be sharing it with. There is also data security applied to that, as well as then the rights of individuals or the subject that is then essentially using your platform. And who is responsible and, of course, accountable for that? And that would essentially be you, the manager of the platform, I would think, right? So non-compliance does lead, or can lead, should I say, maybe, to very nice penalties. And none of us want those. So it's very important to, of course, make sure that we comply to the law. Okay, so with that, Scriptcase has you in mind and has that built into Scriptcase. So again, it's not anything you really have to worry about, okay? Scriptcase is developed with privacy by design, okay? Not in mind, okay? Not privacy in mind, by design. So from the ground up, it is designed to provide you, as well as your end users, privacy. And privacy by default. So there are two fundamental principles in the protection of privacy as well as personal data. And That is especially in the context of designing and developing systems, products, and services that we provide. Now, privacy by design. So privacy by project, that would also account for that. So privacy by design also includes privacy for your project right from the beginning during the design of your system, your products or services that you are going to offer within Scriptcase. Then it's not an afterthought or an addition. It's from the ground up, from the core of your development. So this does include some basic practices. And I say basic, they may not be basic for some, but considering that they are laws, they should be basic. And that is data minimization, encryption, access control, transparency, and including measures aimed at protecting the privacy of users. And all of these features are actually built into Scriptcase. Now, when I say privacy by default, so by default, the Scriptcase environment focuses, or should I say it's been developed to focus on the default configuration of systems, the products that we create, as well as the services we provide, ensuring the maximum privacy protection of our users. And that is, of course, without having them to take any additional actions, so no annoying pop-ups. Now, of course, any of those features that you would include yourself, you would then maybe need to add a pop-up. That is something you would need to check. But by default, everything developed in Scriptcase, it is by design. So as an example, you can have an application that has its privacy settings set to collect only the minimum data necessary for the basic functionality. Now, with the option for users to enable then more permissive settings, meaning if you have notifications, you give the user the option to enable or disable them as an idea. Then we have, of course, the common risks of our web applications when it comes to security. And, well, there are a lot of them. And, of course, Scriptcase automatically generates source code programs in PHP that we develop, as well as in JavaScript, because all of that's included, HTML, CSS, PHP, JavaScript, and they all run completely independent from the tool. Okay, so that is important to note. Now, Scriptcase is designed with features to help you as the developer to create secure applications. And that is, of course, very important for you as well as your end users. Now, for that, you have user authentication, you have access control systems that you can generate as well as further develop, and sanitation of data entry points, which is quite important. And again, that's not something you have to worry about for the generated content. Now, it is of course important that the final application is safe and secure, and that does depend on the way the resources that are available are used and of course configured by the developer. Now, the safety of the end application depends on several factors, such as the competence of the developer, adequate implementation of safety practices, and also the configuration of the server where the application will be hosted. Now, there are quite a few other security things I can think of here, that other factors, should I say, that will really impact this. But that is for you, of course, to research and ensure that you apply to your end product. Now, from the ground up, the general security of what is required is included, and all of those security measures can be adopted with Scriptcase just with a click here and there, and that can then be applied. So let's have a look at some of those within the Scriptcase applications. So here I have a form application as well as a grid, and you will notice that the security settings here, so in the left menu, and if I increase that maybe a little bit for you, in the left side menu here we have security, and then on the right you will be presented with all of the security options. Now, do note that the form and the grid is pretty much identical on the options. Now, for the form we have here the captcha, otherwise headers, cookies and security options are provided. Now, within our security options, we can enable security for an application. Now, when you generate your security platform, or the default module, should I say, then of course the security can be enabled via the generation. Now, if by chance you decide to remove the security, you need to always be sure to enable it again if it is required. And I would generally think in most situations it is. So just click the box here and security for this application would then be enabled. You also have then an option to add a separate URL or another URL to redirect the user to if they do not have access to this application. So you can direct them directly to the login page, which would essentially be the default, or you could direct them to another application, a sorry page maybe. Below that, we have an extra option to add an extra layer of security to this application, because the security options we've just gone through here, use security and the URL, are included within the default module, and that is managed in that sense. But now here the use password will add an extra password field to this application. So I could add a password in here, and then opening the application, the security would be validated, and if possible, they would then still have to enter the password to actually run the application, which is a nice extra security feature to enable for those extra security applications. Now below that, you have options here to request password once per session, or you can actually ask them every so often, which is an idea that you force them then to log back in again. And when I say them, I mean your end user. Now, below that, we have the option here to enable direct call by URL, which then allows the application to be called via the URL within your browser. We have then below that then cookies, and here we have HTTP only, and we can enable that or disable that, and that would then, as it indicates here, prevent access to scripting languages such as Scriptcase. Scriptcase is also developed with JavaScript, so that could cause you some issues depending on the type of application that you are actually working with. So that is important to note. You have below that also here the session ID, and that then stores the session ID in cookies on the client side and cannot be passed through URLs. Now, when you store your user ID, having that set within your application and global variable, you may want to check here that the variable is not set to get post and maybe using session, just to enable the security a little more or to further strengthen it. Below that, we have cookie secure also, which then determines that cookies should only be transmitted over secure connections. And that means by enabling this, HTTPS is a requirement for your cookie data. And I would highly suggest that setting for many of your applications once deployed. Below that, you have then the header options. So here we can disable cross-scripting, which is of course very interesting. I say very interesting because it's also very detrimental to your project and applications. So not allowing this is very important. So as it indicates here, please watch this option carefully. Once you disable this option, you will be putting your application in risk or at risk. Okay, so that is what you will be doing. If you disable this, your application will be at risk because you will be disabling the cross-site scripting auditor. That's what this is standing for, XSS, and you do not want to disable this unless you have the need for it. So that is very important. You have then also the strict transport security protocol. Now that determines that the application pages can only be accessed through the HTTPS protocol. So if you have HTTPS, and today generally everything is HTTPS. So ideally you would want to maybe enable that. Below that we have then X-frame options, and we can set that to same origin or deny, and that sets the rule for including applications in iframes. And that means if you use iframes within your application, or maybe somebody else wants to use your applications within their iframes, then you can actually fully deny and disable that option here. Otherwise, same origin, meaning you could use it within the same area, i.e. the same domain. Below that we have then the X content type options, and that determines the MIME types of the requested files that must be respected by the browser. And that is of course maybe a good thing to click depending on your requirements. Below that we have the referrer policy, and here we can define no referrer when downgraded, origin when cross origin, same origin, strict origin when cross origin, and unsafe URL. Now in many cases you may want to set same origin or no referrer or even strict origin. That will of course really depend on your applications. And this would basically set how much information would then be included within the requests made to and from your system. And of course we can restrict that then with that Dropbox. Now below that we have the feature policy, the permissions policy, as well as the content security policy. And within each of these you can define the relevant policies that should be included within your headers when requesting. So there are some examples here. So here there's an example: feature policy, unsized media none, geolocation self, and then HTTPS, camera, and star. And then here we determine the behavior of the certain characteristics of the browser and add our rules, and they are comma separated. So here we could say full screen and geolocation as an example. Below that we have then the behavior of the browser features as well as any APIs that you may have running. And here you also have an example with content security policy, default source, HTTPS, unsafe eval, unsafe inline, and object source none. Okay, that would then set the content security policy within the headers on request of your pages. Now Scriptcase also includes various tools for access control, providing you essentially a complete access control system, helping you ensure that your users have access to only the areas and functionalities of the application that you want them to have, or that are maybe appropriate for their position as well as their functions. Now, there are 5 available security modules. Now we have them right here. We have the group security module, which then creates applications based on security at a group level. So in this scenario, groups have access to certain applications, and basically you manage and define that within the back end. I tell you, this is the most commonly used group security or security module within Scriptcase, and it is obvious why. We also then have the application module. So here you can create your applications based on security at the application level, where the application is related to the user and not actually a group. And this would then of course change the entire dynamics of your security applications. The next module we have is then user. And this module then generates the applications based on a user level, where applications are then associated with the user's login. This is probably the simplest form of the security module available within Scriptcase. It is fully functional and robust. Below that you have the 2 LDAP options. So this is in fact only one module because it is LDAP, but they have a slightly different configuration. And the LDAP application creates the authentication applications where access level is carried out by the LDAP server, where LDAP creates the applications based on the application level, which is then related to LDAP itself, which is then slightly different. Oh, very different actually. But those would then be specialist security modules for when you maybe have a Windows server up and running and can use LDAP authentication. Now, with each of these security modules, the authentication is built in. Now, it is important for the authentication that it is simple enough and easy enough for end users to use, and that is definitely there within each of these modules. Now, for GDPR, you also have total control, meaning you can access the privileges assigned to the groups or the applications and the users and so forth, and make those adjustments within the required security module. Now, each of the security modules includes a robust authentication system. Now, you can use secure authentication methods such as two-factor, which is 2FA, or multi-factor MFA. The security modules implement automatically, with a click of a button here and there, some very basic options that are required for this. And that would then be the two-factor authentication via email, SMS, and even the Google Authenticator. And all of those are built directly into each of those modules, and you can apply them as needed. The security modules also include login attempt limits, so you can actually implement account lockout policies or time or a specific number of successful login attempts to mitigate those brute force attacks. So when somebody is trying to log into your system 50,000 times in a row to crack those usernames and passwords, well, this will for sure slow them down considerably. Now, the Scriptcase security modules include options to enable protection against brute force attacks, and you can enable those features as well as the lock time and also the number of login attempts before the user is logged out, and you can do all of that within the back end. You also then have the logging system, which then shows your logged in users, your failed login attempts, as well as successful login attempts within the log system. So you are fully secured against brute force attacks with the brute force lockout time that you can enable, as well as the number of attempts before blocking an end user. And I would highly recommend using those. The Scriptcase security modules also include capture as well as recapture. And capture protects against spam and the decryption of passwords with a very simple test that proves that you are human and not a computer trying to hack a password protected account. So those features are available for you. Now, recapture is similar to capture, but it uses an API made by Google, and that then checks the security on their end. And that is maybe a better system to use because every so often it is also updated, and it includes picture verification and other options. The security modules also protect you from SQL injection, as well as the default generated applications. Now, it is important to use parameterized queries when you prepare your statements to prevent injection attacks from SQL. And there are native macros that you can use, and you'll find the macros here within the Scriptcase documents section, and there you have then macros. And scrolling around down in here, you will find a whole bunch of macros that will help you not only with securing your applications with SQL injection, but also further applying and hardening those security features that you would want to maybe include within your applications. Now, each of the security modules also includes a security menu when you apply restrictive policies to leave your system much more secure. So it is important that you check your security menu once you develop either of the modules, and of course then go ahead and make those adjustments within the back end. The included cross-site scripting, or XSS prevention, that is included within Scriptcase sanitizes and validates all user entries to prevent any malicious scripts to be injected into code and run on the user's browser. That is not something that you want to happen, so it is ensure that those features are not disabled unless you really need to, and of course enable them further if you possibly can. The CSFR for cross-site request forgery prevention ensures that all requests originate from the application and not from some malicious bad sources or users that are trying to abuse your system. And Scriptcase does include all you need preventing those malicious attacks on your applications. And of course, with those unauthorized commands that are transmitted via the user's page would then not be trusted, because you would then have that configured within your Scriptcase application or not. Now, cookies are very important and of course also a big topic within the GDPR, and cookies are set by the server or by JavaScript, and they cannot be accessed anyway by JavaScript, so that's important to note. So there's no way of you actually accessing those cookies and actually obtaining any data from them. With the HTTP only parameter enabled within your application, it makes it also more difficult to steal session data through XSS or cross-site scripting, because JavaScript cannot read the contents of those cookies. Now, a very exploited attack in XSS is the theft of users' session cookies. And cookie theft is carried out through a JavaScript command that sends the cookies to an external URL where the attacking user then has full control. Now, those features are enabled by default in all Scriptcase applications, and we have just seen them a few moments ago. The security headers add an extra layer of protection, which has then a purpose of preventing cyber attacks on your applications. An example of that would be using the HTTP header to protect user data or prevent the insertion of malicious scripts on pages. Now, we also have data encryption capabilities within Scriptcase, and that is enabled and available to you via the use of a macro. Now, using encryption to protect sensitive data during the transit, so using HTTPS, it's pretty much mandatory these days, isn't it? Now, it is important for data encryption to enable HTTPS or have a secure socket layer for your server, and that then enables communication via HTTPS. Now, these days for data encryption, HTTPS is pretty much the default standard, and of course we all want to have that enabled on our server, so be sure to have those SSL certificates up to date and functional and enabled on your hosting environment, and that will ensure that the transit of your data is secured. Now, Scriptcase has all of that built in, so you don't have to worry about anything, but at the same time there are also macros available for you to encrypt your own data or decrypt your data if you require so, and one of those is the SC_encode or _decode. Now, Scriptcase also includes regular updates, helping you maintain all applications components of the platform that you have developed. And it has been updated then with the latest security patches that are available, and as many of you know, Scriptcase has recurring updates for its system. That includes the libraries, the APIs, which are constantly updated, as well as PHP, which was not so long ago updated also, and that is then all included within the development environment as well as within the production environment, keeping your systems safe and secure. Scriptcase also includes auditing and monitoring features. There is the audit log that allows you to track any suspicious activity, and you can add to that log yourself, again using the macros, so be sure to check those out. Now the security module can deploy a log table as well, and of course that then is included and added into the security, allowing you to retain a detailed history of all those actions performed by your end users. And that can be the login, data updates, application updates, operations and features and accesses that have been performed by that end user. The logs are quite useful for monitoring user changes within the system, as well as providing you audit cases and helping you with analyzing how your systems are used. Now the log module makes it possible to create multiple log schemas. So you can add multiple schemas and have different applications linked to a different log schema. This will then allow you to individually configure those logs and have a different log for different applications. Scriptcase also hosts staff training, educating developers and users about good practices in security, such as the use of strong passwords. Now myself, I'm a kicker for 24 characters, the identification of phishing emails, and the importance of data security. And I wonder how many people get trapped by those phishing emails and click on those nasty links. Of course, that is something we are all aware of, or should be, and of course is also very important for our applications as well as for Scriptcase. And for that, not only do we have staff training, but there is also then regular security testing. So Scriptcase performs penetration tests on its own environment, allowing for those bugs to be found, those security issues to be hardened and secured. And with regular tests on a regular basis is that only possible, helping you to identify and correct any vulnerabilities that can be exploited by attackers. And of course, this is very important that this happens on a regular basis because of the updates. When APIs are updated, that could leave a hole somewhere. So it's important that is always checked. And Scriptcase has your back. Now, you may be worried about all of your projects that you have created within Scriptcase, or the hard work and many hours that you may have spent developing those systems for your business. And for that, Scriptcase includes a backup system, and you can perform regular backups from your applications, from your environment, and securely store your applications, projects, even your environment in off-site locations, on a side hard drive, on a floppy disk, if those still existed, whatever it may be, where you can store your data and you know it will be safe for the years to come, ensuring that you can recover in case something has been compromised. Now, implementing these security best practices can, of course, help reduce the risk of web applications being compromised by cyber attacks. But it is important to note that Scriptcase can only do so much, meaning you as the developer need to ensure that some of those features are enabled within the applications. So it's important to remember also that security is a continuous process. There are always new threats and vulnerabilities emerge all the time. And that does, of course, require you to be more than proactive and maintain the security of not only your applications, your systems, but also your environments. Now, Scriptcase is a super safe tool, I must say, if used correctly, with safe development practices and regular updates to ensure protection against possible vulnerabilities. So that is very important, and of course, I thank you all for joining today's video, and I hope you have learnt a great deal about security within Scriptcase in today's video. So thanks for watching, and until the next video.